IVM.
Hey guys, this is Chuck here, and before we dive into all the banter and bad jokes on this week's episode, I want to let you know about a new show I'm hosting. It's called One Rep at a Time. It's got me talking about the various aspects of fitness and health, like nutrition, exercise, stress, sleep. It's a show geared towards those who are looking to kickstart their fitness journey. I drop in lots of trivia, give you my own experiences and mistakes, lots of tips, speak to a lot of experts. So if you're looking to start a fitness journey, this is the show for you. Check out One Rep at a Time on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. All right, on with the show. Hello and welcome to episode 259 of Simblified. Those of you who tuned in last week would know that we had done stories with Naren, stories of Bombay with Naren, stories of Mumbai with Naren, if you prefer. Although it was Bombay when Naren grew up. Anyway, so for those of you who didn't tune in last week, I had this idea of just, doing various Naren stories. And I just wanted to have a central theme around it. And I thought the city of Mumbai would be a good one because Naren's grown up over here. He's, worked over here. He's seen so many things change and all that. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it because it's a nice continuation to which today's episode will lead to. And for those of you who did listen to the last episode, well, welcome. So yeah, it's just going to be more stories, more banter, more bad jokes. And yeah, hope you enjoy this. This is part 2 of Stories with Naren.
Naren, did you at some point mentioned that you were a leg spinner? Did you play any cricket growing up in Mumbai?
Yeah. So lots, right? When I was growing up, so we moved when I was 10, 11 years or something. And the new house that we went to was in the middle of nowhere. So that's when I really started reading. Before that, that was all I could do. I had 2 younger sisters and our neighbor had 3 daughters and another neighbor had 1 daughter and a son. But the son was like 8 years younger than me, a little toddler. So I had no one to play with. And these books became my friend. But before that, I used to play a lot of cricket, and there was one older kid who was a leg spinner, and he sort of, he would tell us how to bowl a googly. And that time googly was the thing, like if you could bowl a googly. And so I knew how to bowl a googly, and other boys would like hold me in great respect. Yaar, isko googly aata hai and all that. And we were preening. Then when I went to Manipal, for many years I didn't. When I went to Manipal, some of my friends were in the college team. I used to tag along, and then net practice, someone asked me to bowl and I was bowling pretty good. And then I wasn't that good, but I was okay. And so I was in and out of the team I used to play. And that was it. Yeah, we won some inter-college something when I was in MBA in SPJ in this thing, which was actually, because management, it was like a really small world. There were 4 or 5 management institutes. And so the place where our institute was in the same campus as an engineering college called Sardar Patel Engineering College. And they were like, they were proper, proper cricketers. They're like practice and they put up nets and everything. And one day we shared a hostel. So the SPJN hostel and the Sardar Patel hostel was common back in the day. So something happened and they challenged us. They challenged us to a match. So
I like how Bombay this is. When you have an argument, you challenge each other.
Challenge me for a
match. You go, there's a proper ground and SPJN takes batting, right? And so these guys bowl and like every time the ball goes somewhere, these guys are all bounding after it, find a ball and everything. And eventually our innings gets over and then it is their turn. And then you have 1 bowler, 1 wicketkeeper, some 7 or 8 slips and no one else. No one wants to do any fielding. So after 3 or 4, they say, someone hit the ball over mid-wicket or something. There's no fielder there. And it went into the bushes.
Oh, God.
And no one from the SPJN side wanted to go and look for me.
We've batted, it's enough.
So they were extremely disappointed. We considered a match, of course. So they spent one nice 2 hours in the sun giving us batting, and then they didn't get anything. So that was some very sincere engineering college guys discovering what frauds MBAs are.
Yeah. No, I only asked because one of the highlights of Bombay for me is watching a match at the Wankhede, where the experience is absolutely brilliant because of the fans, again, not because of the facilities and not IPL. Please don't.
And not the performance of Mumbai Indians right now.
Go to an international match and go to the North Stand, because there's this set of fans called the North Stand gang, and it's amazing, right? They basically add a lot of atmosphere to it. And I've also had the privilege of watching a match at Bangalore in Chinnaswamy, so I know how different the crowd is, because cricket is just ingrained into the Mumbai blood, and amazing experience.
I remember once when I was in Manipal, and someone was bowling off spin, and I played, and the ball just sort of went between my bat and pad, and I got bowled. And there was one Bombay guy who was a captain of the team. He berated me for 10 minutes on how my technique was wrong. Yeah. He said, how the hell, who taught you to play cricket? And I was like, no
Naren,
one. That's the problem.
So here's where another one of my favorite Naren stories is about to come in, which I don't think you have mentioned Simplified before. Naren, why don't you tell us how you were coached and how to bat like Rahul Dravid by an auto rickshaw?
Oh, yeah, man. So I've never been serious about cricket, right? So, growing up, we played a lot, but somehow I'm just not able to take that game seriously, rightly or wrong. And I'm in an auto, and actually on my way to meet Chuck, if memory serves. Yeah. And it's a long ride. Auto guy is very chatty. So we're discussing, and the talk is about Rahul. I generally knew from everyone that Rahul Dravid is I think it was one-day cricket at a one-day international at that point of time. And Rahul Dravid is very solid, right? So some of my friends would keep belly aching about how he is, he's unfit for one-day cricket. He scores very slowly. So I said the same thing. I told the auto, and auto guy was, he was not. And I said, Rahul Dravid, he's too slow. He's not good or something. And the auto, this is Western Express Highway, and he's going at a nice clip, and he just slams the brake, pulls to the side.
Much like Dravid.
Yeah, much like Dravid. Pulls to the side, gets out, and demonstrates how Dravid plays a shot and how other people play a shot. And he's like, backlift. I didn't even know this. So apparently, if your backlift comes from the third man direction and goes to some other direction, then the probability of getting an outside edge is higher than if you're something very, very technical stuff. But he demonstrated it, and he just gave me like a 5-minute lecture with action, standing. This is the pitch, this is the ball, this is the thing, and this is how the software, and this is what Rahul Dravid does. And then he told me, like, in way, मालूम नहीं तो बोलने का नहीं, समझा क्या? No. I was suitably chastised. Yeah. So after that, from that day to this, I have never criticized Rahul Dravid's batting.
I would love to hear a podcast where people just go around interviewing auto rickshaw wallahs and getting out their stories. I remember one thing going viral a few years ago. Viral as in like in the metal community in Bombay. One guy happened
very viral.
One guy chanced upon a taxi driver who was a huge metal fan, and not just of global metal but of Indian metal.
Naren, just to clarify, we're not talking about Iron. We're talking
about we're talking about Iron Maiden.
Naren's like, I know some metal fans.
I have to tell you my Dasara Spring exhibition.
Yeah, please.
So, when I got married, my wife is from Mysore. We went to, the first Dasara, we went to Mysore, and Dasara is an amazing time to be in Mysore. It's like pageantry and, a lot of stuff. And there are cultural exhibitions all around. So there was one Dasara exhibition. I loved the thing. And then the next time I went, was in March or April or something. And there was another exhibition. So I asked them, is this a Dasara exhibition? No, this is a spring exhibition. I was very impressed. I mean, there are different kinds. There are torsion spraying, there are tension spraying, there are compression spraying, there are bellable springs. There are, so I said, we have to see this exhibition. And I go there and all I find is like handicrafts and whatever. And then, Sheila being Sheila told me, you silly boy, I know exactly what you were thinking. So that was my experience with spring exhibition.
Yeah. Sorry, Chuck, I interrupted you mid-story.
No, there's nothing. Naren's was a better story in any case. So, it's hard to segue from this, but one of the things that has constantly fascinated me about this city is how many different communities kind of call it home, and that has kind of added to the culture, right? In many ways, like right from, I guess you could say, the invaders, right from then going all the way to Parsis, which contributed a lot to the Bombay that we know today. Then the wave of South Indians and carving out Matunga and parts of the east for themselves. And then you have, of course, the Gujaratis who keep the city running in some ways. And then the Marathis, the locals, as well as people. Like, it feels like, in some way, the very Bombay inventions of vada pav and pav bhaji are in some sense a good reflection of the city itself, just mixing together various cultures, jugaad happening some way or the other. And it's very fascinating to me as somebody very much like Tonya, like somebody who hated the city when I came in and has grown to love the city in some ways. It's fascinating to me when I walk around and see these small remnants of past cultures, right? So, for example, I remember going for a gig, I think somewhere in Mahalakshmi. It's near that famous studios, that complex. I forget what that complex is called, but there's this old dilapidated wall. Okay, it's just a wall. And I just stopped and looked at it. Like, it was a gorgeous looking wall, and in the right light could have made for a good Instagram photo or something. I just thought like how much history has something like this particular wall scene. Then a friend and I, once we were cycling and we went actually up to Vasai Fort, and we were thinking about, how much history this one fort must have seen. And if done up, could actually be a pretty neat tourist attraction by itself. And in the most obscure of places, you will find some random statue or, some, what do you say? Sort of like some tribute to the past or some community somewhere.
Yeah.
That's something that constantly fascinates me about the city. There's always something or the other to discover. It could be a piece of trivia. Like, it absolutely blew my mind when I found out that the CST road in Kalina is not the CST in South Bombay. It stands for what? Kurla Station Trunk Road or something, right?
I don't know what CST road. I don't know what it sounds.
Yes. So anyway, I'll Google that. But the larger point being, it just seems like there's just all these various things. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I go out where I stay, Goregaon West, and just find some random tribute to the past somewhere. I have no question to lead in with this one. Naren, please rescue us with the story while I find out what CST stands for.
Yeah. So Bombay is one of the few cities, I actually don't know of any other, which was entirely built by immigrant traders. Almost entirely, right?
Yeah.
So there's one indigenous population, which is basically the fishing community. And there is a community called the Pathare Prabhus who are pretty old. So, I mean, Bombay has a long history. I mean, there's this place, Walkeshwar, right?
Yeah.
So Walkeshwar has a Ban Ganga tank, right? And Ban Ganga tank has a temple which dates back to the Hemad Panti era, which is like 10th century or 11th century. So, Bombay was important enough for someone from that, to build a temple and everything. But it never really became big. Portuguese came, they knew that it was a good port because they wanted ports all along the coast. So, they knew they wanted to control the spice trade and they wanted to take over the spice trade from the Arab traders. So they put an outpost at Surat, they put an outpost at Daman, at Diu, at Bombay, Goa, and Vasai also, and Mangalore and a couple of places in Kerala. And Bombay was a fail because they didn't find any supporting infrastructure. They weren't able to get any spices involved. So they nicely palmed it off to King Charles II as dowry. So they, instead of, why do you want cash and sort of, bonds and whatever went for assets in those days. They said, we have this lovely island called Bombay, please take it. And
back then it was 7 different islands or something.
7 different islands, yeah. And it took forever. So it wasn't until the Third Anglo-Maratha War in the very, very early 1800s that the British actually conquered the Marathas. Marathas were absolutely powerful and they didn't allow the British any kind of, peaceful trading there. Then all these traders started coming, Gujarati traders, Marwadi traders, Parsi traders, and they started building things. So one small but important community is called Bori. Bori is
Bori Muslims.
So you'll find a lot of them in the fort area, and they are in the metal and hardware and that kind of thing. So ships would come from England, and these merchants would buy all the wares and then sell it to the other Indians. So the Britisher would, he would do the wholesale, and these guys would do the retail. That was how. So Bombay was entirely built by traders. I don't know. I'm sure Delhi wasn't, because Calcutta was built by the British. There was a lot of trade in Calcutta as well. So maybe Calcutta is also built by traders. And that's why Bombay became very cosmopolitan, and and it has a tradition of pluralism. It used to have. It's distressing to see it going away now, but there were periods, different communities were hated at different times. I remember a time when South Indians were hated, and then South Indians became other, then Gujaratis were hated and they became okay, and so on and so forth. But a culture of hatred never took root in Bombay. Yeah. So
wow.
That
well
way
said. Nice. By the way, CST road, which I was saying, it stands for Central Salset Tramway.
Oh wow!
So that's what the CST road of So when I saw it first, I was like, okay, why do they have a CST road over here? It's not like it's going all the way to Fort. So then only later realized it stands for Central Salset Tramway. I don't know if you guys have ever been on one of these Bombay walking tours or something like that, and I highly recommend them for anyone who's in the city, or even somebody who's staying in the city. Like, I remember doing a very interesting one a couple of years back. And it wasn't even a walking tour. It was a cycling tour. It was a cycling tour of South Bombay. And the way these guys had done it, a lovely bunch of guys. The group was called the Legends of Bombay Bards. Legends of Bombay Bards. Bards who talk about the legends of Bombay. And it was very nice because it wasn't just, okay, here's this building, that building, that building. They told the story of how Bombay was built by one person, or the story of one person, and all the various stops that they had to make. So this was a person who was very instrumental in the building of Bombay. I unfortunately forget the gentleman's name, but he was one of those old Parsi folks who had come over here. They were telling us a story outside one spot, and then they were talking about how he and a whole bunch of others decided to start the Bombay Stock Exchange, and they pointed to a tree and said, this is the very banyan tree under which the idea for the Bombay Stock Exchange came about. And then they would drive us somewhere else and say, okay, this was the institute that was first started as a bank and then became this and then became this, and today is the RBI building. And then the descendants of that guy still have a small business in their name, and took us to a ramshackle looking building, and they pointed, you can see these guys are still operating as a small concern over here. So it's quite fascinating. You have these strands of history running everywhere. So anyone who stays in Bombay, I'd highly recommend you go for either one of these cycling tours or walking tours, because it's almost like, especially in South Bombay, there's just so much history happening sort of like everywhere. And that's something that's always fascinated me about the city.
Yeah, you can actually similarly do a walking tour of... so I once did a walking tour of Bandra itself. And Bandra's history as a port, and how kind of like the Portuguese made their base over there. How is there a colony of Muslims over there as well? And like why all those people are there. Plus, including the recent history of how Bandra became the place where all the Bollywood people also come and settle.
Yeah.
So all of that culture, that culture also. So walking tours of Bombay, that's what, right? Like there is a lot of amongst all of this jugaad and setting up and the trash and all that stuff, there's a ton of history inside Bombay.
There are so many fascinating things. I remember, so you guys might remember Shaur Mishra. She came on the show, in fact, and she wrote a great book recently on her experience with cancer. She runs these walking tours, and in fact now is conducting tours as well. She took me and a few others on a very informal walk of Bandra West, the more Christian areas, the more cottages and all that. And she even pointed to some of these signs that these cottages, not cottages, I think that's
bungalows.
That's overstating. Yeah, bungalows really. They have all in a particular style. And I remember one Christmas, couple of us had gone down to South Bombay, where there's actually in the bylanes of somewhere in Fort, there's a small, it's almost like a village within Bombay called Kotachi Wadi. Naren, you probably know about this. It's a complete, it was like being in Goa, like people were cooking, like, and there were carols. It was beautiful. And even if you look at it, not from a cultural side, it's fascinating to me that there are little pockets of, say, very specific commerce, right? Like many people will know Lamington Road as the place where cheap electronics are sold. And that's where we all used to go before Amazon made it easy. But even today, you ask any person who has picked up a DSLR in Bombay, and at some point of time, they would have been to the informal camera market in Fort.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazon or eBay rather has nothing on these guys. You go over there, you find so many shops selling lens of all kinds and all types. It's crazy. And the place where I stay, not too far away, is actually what I realized is the main area in Bombay where Film City gets and rents their lights and sounds and things like that. Like, if you take a walk around the place where I stay, you'll find so many studios and light shops that rent out stuff. And in the morning, sometimes when I go on a cycle ride or a walk, you'll find these huge trucks that come in and people just loading in massive amount of lights. I'm like, wow, that's probably lighting up some Bollywood star today or something like that.
Yeah,
kind of fascinating.
That's pretty fascinating.
And we haven't even spoken about National Park, which is kind of like, it's mad that a metropolis like this, which has as much amount of space as this city does, as jam-packed as the city does, has a freaking national park inside it.
So actually, one of my early TILs into Mumbai was partly because, I still am employed by the Tata Group, but I happened to work with the Taj for quite a bit. And like learning the fact that the Taj Hotel in Mumbai precedes the gateway of India, right? I didn't actually know that when I came in. And then the interesting story, which is a common legend about how actually the facade of the hotel is backside front. All of that is actually incorrect. And also the fact that basically, Mr. Tata built the hotel because he was turned away from 5-star
Watson Hotel.
Dogs and Indians not allowed, right? Because how wrong it is, you get to know only if you've been associated or had the heritage walk of the Taj, which I was very fortunate enough to have, because the dome that is on top of the Taj Mahal Palace, right? That's used as one of the triangulation points actually by the Navy and stuff like that. But the interesting fact about that is that the steel used in that dome is the same steel that is used to build the Eiffel Tower, right? And all of this because Mr. Tata was well traveled and he'd gone abroad and obviously knows of the best material, etc. So it seems like a very strange thing for him to walk into a 5-star hotel if he knows he's not going to be allowed, right? And the fact that the facade is the way it is because back then you used to have horse carriages bringing in guests, and actually the road was the road behind, right? And you would come in and all of that. And the current swimming pool used to be where the horses were kept or some weird funda like that. So yeah, lots of stories, lots of mistold stories also about Bombay as well.
So Naren,
very fascinating place.
Yeah, I mean, we've spent the last half an hour or so just romanticizing and talking about how Bombay is basically different amalgamations that have come together. How, do you remember when you felt this, or was this always just part of your life? I stay in a city where there are Marathis here, there are Gujaratis here, there are South Indians here, Bongs there. Or did that hit you at any point of time? Wow, this is a weird city.
It always, not dramatically. So you always sort of know that there's a city full of surprises. But every now and then you are pleasantly, sometimes unpleasantly surprised by the kind of people that live, the kind of... so unpleasantly surprised during the riots. So when the Babri Masjid was demolished, there were some pretty bad riots in the aftermath. And a lot of, senseless. So there was, in Malad, there was an old man who ran a shop for ages, for decades. And someone thought it's a great idea to ransack his shop. They went, they torched his place down. And the man rebuilt his shop and it continues to this day.
Wow.
So there were enough people who supported him also. There were enough people who thought it best to torch the place down. So there are all kinds of people. It's some time, but more on the whole, it's one thing about Bombay, which is, in distinction, at least till recently, Bombay, the real people, the really important and rich people of Bombay, they would like to keep a low profile. They would never flaunt it.
Yeah.
So this is not the case, I believe, in Delhi, where people try to, to claim that they are far more important than they actually are. So that's the way society works there. But in Bombay, it's especially the old trading community, they're super rich. I remember one story so I know a couple of guys who are completely useless guys, and they've done different things at different point of time. At one point of time, they were running a business and they're perennially short of business. One day there was a life and death requirement for some 3 lakh rupees or something like that. They had to get 3 lakh. And they, it was big money at that point of time. So they reached out to another friend of ours who was a policeman, who was like a pretty senior, whatever, senior inspector or something like that. But a policeman at a good level. And a pretty straightforward guy. So, he didn't have cash lying around. And this guy, so he said, if it's strictly a loan and you guys are going to pay it back. I know a guy, I really recently helped him. There was one big burglary at his place. And we nabbed the people who did that and we recovered the stolen good. He's a diamond merchant. He sits in a place called Pancharatna building. And I'll request him to give you 3 lakhs, but it's a loan. These guys. So they call this guy, and then these guys land up at that guy's place. And it's like a diamond merchant. It's a big place, but rooms and rooms inside rooms kind of thing. And the Sethi is there, elderly guy, and he's got a call from there. He says, yeah, of course, 3 lakh rupees, not a problem. But you'll have to wait for some time because the diamonds are being counted. So every day before they wind up, they have to inventory all the diamonds. And then next day morning, it's 5-10 minutes, please bear. And, get some chai. And so somebody gets some chai and things happening. And these guys so he starts telling them how business is not like it used to be before. So he says, back in the day, we used to make a lot of money. Nowadays, we are lucky if you make 10-15% also, times are very hard. So our friends, useless guys who have come to borrow 3 lakh rupees, start giving him gyan about efficiency and how we should streamline processes and computerize. And this guy is very attentively listening. Is that so? As if these guys are, like Michael Porter from Harvard University coming to give them a lecture. Computerization. Acha. You think it'll help me? Of course. Yeah. It's a great idea. Must do this. All that is happening. Then by that time the chai comes, and then one of the friends asks him, how much, what is your turnover? He says, nothing, what to say, no growth only. Last year, barely it was 4,000 crores. I don't know. They are come to borrow 3 lakh rupees from a guy who makes 400 to 800 crores per annum.
Amazing.
And gave him advice.
Yeah.
And gave him advice.
Yes, even the best of stories, we need a break once in a while. So let's do that right now.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says His Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Vagda, and Antariksh talk about the American mother who was arrested because her kid took marijuana-laced gummies to school. Vagda is a co-host for our show Press Decode, so if you haven't been checking that out, check her out on that show as well as this one. The Simblified gang explore Mumbai through Naren stories and observations. On All Things Policies, the Takshashila folk discuss the U.S. Supreme Court's potential decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina introduces us to Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 Agreements of Life. And on Hansivani, hear the story Nai Idga. It explores the role of media amidst a state of religious animosity in our country. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we've been doing a series of profiles of people within the office, so do check that out for sure. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, with a list of all our channels. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you, the listener, responds to the advertising on our network. And also, we just want to know a little bit more about you. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It will really help us build some better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, SBI Life Insurance and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
And now back to discussing the lovely city of Bombay with Naren and the rest of the Simplified gang. So a completely different tangent, but I remembered something I wanted to ask you. So Naren, it seems to me like Bombay is a city that's ripe for a lot of cultures or subcultures to actually start off. Right. And I'm talking about the arts, especially over here. And a recent one that I could say is the whole hip hop scene that has developed largely from the slums of Kurla and Dharavi. Right. I'm not a big fan of the genre myself musically, but I deeply appreciate the roots where it came from. And I find that it's very similar to say how heavy metal was born out of industrial towns in central England, and how the blues was born out of it's basically poor man's music from poor black man's music from the southern states in the US. That way, this just feels like it's a lot more authentic rather than, rich folks from Lokhandwala rapping about fast cars and all that. What's your scene on this? Like, this is one example that I know, but do you know of any other sort of I'm assuming that there's a whole wave of content creators on the equivalents of TikTok, for instance, that are talking. Like, there's a hilarious TikTok account which is now migrated. I was asking Naren, are you aware of any such, cultures like this? Like, this is hilarious Instagram account. It used to be TikTok, obviously, called Reptiles of Kurla. And I don't know whether there's parody, but all of them are so earthy humor that, TikTok was so great at bringing out in this country. Anything like you observed or noticed through the years? It could be literary, it could be movie, it could be music, anything at all?
Yeah, so there was, it became mainstream, Bollywood also. There was this, I think Jackie Shroff started it, and there was a school street Bidu kind of. So that's that's a culture that's born on the streets of Bombay, mostly from the chawls and things like that. And it's a different kind of cool, right? So the city is so segmented. So there's this beautiful movie called Gully Boys, which spoke about the rap, the hip hop culture in the slums of Kurla. So that's completely different from the cool things. And there's also another tradition of underworld sort of, kind of thing, which grew from a different location in Bombay, where they had their own idiom, their own language, their own slang, and not much of it translated into art, but it definitely contributed a lot to language, is what I think. A lot of it, you would have seen it on movies. People say Bidu and
absolutely. Absolutely. Like just taking that music explanation itself a little further, there's this whole scene in, let's face it, in South Bombay, Bandra and all that, which is very Christian oriented, not Christian oriented, but mostly it's Christians performing, which is very Western, very jazz, very opera house, where you have artists like Something Relevant and Bombay Brass who are very, they wouldn't be out of place at international jazz festival. The city has Mahindra Blues Fest, which is such a renowned blues music festival around the world, I'd like to say, with some of the greatest artists that have ever played guitar coming to the country. And at the same time, the same city is birthing something like the whole Jackie Shroff type movement and then rap as well. It's just fascinating that there are so many different strands, and that's just music alone. I remember this is one thing, and I think now is a good time to segue into seafood, which is something that we should definitely talk about. I know your stories there. Yeah. I remember outside our offices in Lower Parel, during lunchtime, there used to be, like, the stalls, of course, are all there, but there used to be these Koli women who would come and have baskets full of everything from chapati, all the ragi millet based bakris.
Wow.
And all the, fish curries, chicken curries, like everything. You could have like a really good spanking spicy meal for like $40-50 right outside Kamala Mills, Toddy Mills and all that. And that's an entire community, because you could sense the language that they're speaking wasn't exactly Marathi. They're all speaking to each other in a very, and they have their own accounting system and all that going for them. It's like, it warms my heart to some way is to say that even in today's fragmented day and age, that these sort of communities and sub-communities kind of exist, and feels like Bombay is the right place for that.
Yeah. One of my most, one community that really fascinates me is a small community called the East Indians.
East Indians, bottle masala.
So East Indians are
To be clear, these are not people from Calcutta.
Yeah,
they're
so
not people from the east of India.
I'm not really clear why they are called East Indians. Yeah. I think it is because they were converted by the Portuguese in the late 1500s, right? They're prior to the East India Company. So they're not even, even that is not the origin of their name. So I don't know why they called it. But they speak Marathi. They have their own traditions. And it's a really small community. So a lot of them have migrated, so it's not that vibrant, that. But when I was growing up, I had a lot of friends from that community. They had the most different kind of, it was a different kind of flavor profile, their food, right? So it was...
I think half-baked knowledge, but if nobody can fact check it, I can tell you. One of the fascinating thing about Christianity in India is that there are several castes within it, although not apparently mentioned, right? For instance, in Kerala, it is very, very strong because my sort of family and everyone believes that Saint Thomas actually visited Kerala in AD 52, although historical record says Saint Thomas didn't visit, but probably one of his followers, which meant that Christianity came to India actually in Kerala much before it went to Rome, right? So Roman Catholicism is actually after Indian Catholicism, right? So at that point
they should call them Kerala Christian, right?
Correct, absolutely. At that point in time, the assertion was only a few families were converted. They were Brahmins. This is the assertion that we have 2000 years later, imagine. So we are Brahmins in that sense. And then there was a later wave of conversion which happened much later, and those in Kerala parlance are called Latin Catholics because at this point in time, in the early time, the head of the church used to be in Syria. So we are called Syrian Catholics in that sense. And between these two, there's this always random thing about considering them a different caste and not treating them at the same level. I think based on my shallow reading of one book, which I vaguely remember, is that in Bombay, obviously, there are these first wave of people who were converted when the Portuguese came. And then later, people from Mangalore also got converted. And then they moved to Bombay. And to distinguish between themselves, one sect calls themselves East Indians and the others are Mangaloreans who are treated separately. That's my work-outed funda, but I'm not very sure if it's accurate. Yeah, but there's always this difference between castes that exist even in a small community.
Caste is so much an integral part of our identity. So curiously, if you read a wonderful book called The Early Indians by Tony Joseph, there is genetic evidence to show that what we do now is called endogamy. We marry within our own community, our own castes. And up to around 100 AD, it was heterogamous. So there was literally no tradition of marrying within the community. You just married anyone you like. And all of a sudden, for some inexplicable reason, everyone became endogamous. Soon, what happened was the caste became your security. So that's why people just cling on to their caste. It's horrible, okay? So there are some castes which have crazy amounts of dowry. And I know people who have basically bankrupted themselves trying to marry a couple of daughters and have the daughters being tormented because, the in-laws thought they didn't get enough dowry. And the question for me was, why the hell she's a nice, educated, pretty girl. She could marry anyone, man. Why does she have to marry within the community? But there you are. They go and marry within the community. So till that thing dissolves, we're going to see a lot of, so the transition is likely to be a little bit of pain. And it amazes me how egalitarian religions like Christianity and Islam also have the caste system. Sikhism has a caste system. Sikhism is the youngest and the most egalitarian of them. And even within the Sikhs, there are castes and it's not easy to marry between castes, is what I'm told.
Yeah. But I think I deviated from the original thread, which was around East Indian.
No, that's okay. So actually, let's talk about food a little bit, perhaps. I think Naren will have a lot of stories around that.
But let me get some Bombay hate and say, I think Mumbai is one of the cities with really terrible food, possibly because I haven't eaten in the right places. But every other city in India has way better food than Mumbai does.
And that is the anti side. Now we will move to Naren, who will give the pro. Speaking for.
Yeah, for the motion.
Actually, if you go back to your branch manager, he spoke about the motions.
Yeah.
So, Naren.
So
it was potty in motion. Okay, whatever.
So Bombay has, because it's an immigrant place, you have many different. So, for example, Parsi cuisine, right? So it is almost impossible to have decent Parsi food anywhere else in the country other than Bombay. Even in Bombay, it's vanishing, but you still have places which serve Parsi food. It is distinctive. It has a different flavor profile. It has a different tradition linked to it. And it's always, there are some, like, for example, I don't like the sweet Gujarati dal. I don't like my dal sweet. But there are a lot of people who do. So it's a different flavor profile. So that's one. The Gujarati traders have their own flavor, while Marwadis have their own. Maharashtrians are not at all homogeneous as a state. So you have, if you take the Koli community, it's very different. You take the, Vidarbha guys, the Marathwada guys, the, Konkan has a different flavor profile of its own. So I think Bombay, and because of ready availability of clientele, almost all of these cuisines have fairly decent outlets. But, it tends to be, so there is, Konkanis, the community that I belong to, has its own distinctive cuisine, like everyone else. And there is a place in Matunga called Anand Bhavan, just outside Matunga station, where even today, I think they serve you on a banana leaf, which is how. And only Konkani seem to know about it. Very, very few people. For no reason. No one would go. I mean, you guys wouldn't. But it's nice. It's yummy food.
Meanwhile, in Indiranagar, people are queuing outside for some Rameshwaram idli or something like that. But that happens in Bombay also, actually. Matunga has quite a few of these South Indian places, which...
Yeah. And I think there's another interesting thing in what Naren said is, like, certain communities know of these certain, holes, which may not be, like, if they're new restaurants, they will be marketing themselves, right? Like, for example, Soda Bottle Opener Wala has been making great Parsi food and will be going to town talking about it.
But also, even within the traditional sort of seafood within Mumbai, right? There are like two different types, Gomantak and Malwani maybe. And you probably don't know the difference in where to eat and how to get the correct food possibly.
Yeah, very likely. Yeah.
So the best Gomantak food is in Highway Gomantak in Bandra. Please look it up.
Yeah.
Terrific place. The grumpiest owner ever. He never smiles. And I don't mind that at all because he serves out.
Actually, this is a good metric, no? The grumpiness of the owner is going to be a testament to the quality and history of the restaurant.
Absolutely. There was one even more legendary place, which was Malwani cuisine, a place called Anantashram, which was in Girgaon.
Oh, interesting. And I think the next 10 minutes should be just Naren recommending food places.
Food recommendations done, yeah.
No, unfortunately, Anantashram closed down because, there were family disputes within the family that owned it. But this family was so legendary. One day, Nana Patekar, famous actor, came to eat there because he heard he's a regular guy. He's a human being after all. He felt he should go and eat there. And because Nana Patekar came, hundreds of people flocked to that place to just see the guy because he's a celebrity. And Nana Patekar, I'm told, is a very unassuming guy in real life. He's like very ordinary guy, speaks, he's a Maharashtrian, speaks Marathi, and he's absolutely, unaffected by his fame. That's his reputation. And to his great surprise, he was very sternly told by the owner of Anant Ashram never to come again. Because too many people come to see you. I don't want to see you ever again.
This is the most Bombay thing I have ever heard.
But also, Naren, I think if you want to tell the listeners how you've disowned one of your sons because he went to Mohammed Ali Road and ate at Shalimar and liked the food there.
Yeah.
Shalimar.
Not Shalimar, Noor Mohammadi. Okay, so, but the thing about Ramzan food in Mohammed Ali Road, so Mohammed Ali Road is like the densest sort of, and there is street food. So there are people who set up stalls, and the fun of that is to go to different stalls and sample the wares.
Yeah.
So some of them.
Yeah, and if you're a meat lover, you have stuff like which you'll not find anywhere else in the city.
Yeah. And those street food things. So restaurants like Noor Mohammadi are always there. You can eat. So, he asked in Noor Mohammadi, everything on your menu, is there anything which is Ramzan special? He says, no, all of this is available all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're supposed to, but you go to all the way to Muhammad Ali Road and then sit in an air-conditioned restaurant and nicely eat food.
Yeah, there you go. Another example of all of us eating at the wrong places in Mumbai.
Yeah. But it is actually, Noor Mohammadi is a very nice place. And pro tip, okay, eat the chicken seekh kebab. It is amazingly delicious. Yeah. It's more delicious than the mutton version.
Very cool.
I think that's a good place to end on. I'm sure, Naren, you'll have a lot more restaurant recommendations. So maybe what you should do is just put out a Twitter thread or something with all your favorite food recommendations. One final story from you, Naren, which kind of sums up Bombay for you.
That's
put you on the spot there.
Good thing you gave him advance.
Gave him a heads up.
What is a
spirit of Bombay?
Anything to do with like the bars of Bombay?
Spirit bar. I see what you do.
No, in general in Mumbai, I've noticed that alcohol is not a taboo, right? Like lots of people seem to drink it, and like even small establishment tend to stock it.
So one thing is when we were in engineering college, when you would come to Bombay, we would, we were just sort of excited to be like, go around and we'd buy alcohol. The impecunious students sit on the street and drink it. So literally the first time we did that. So we bought some Old Monk rum and we decided to buy some cola, whatever Thumbs Up was available, and then pour it into this thing and drink. One policeman caught us and he sternly told us that, I can actually arrest you for this. You're not supposed to drink alcohol on the roads. And we were like terrified. I mean, we were like all of 20 years and we didn't know what to do. And we were like stammering. And he's a kindly man. And this is peak Bombay, right? Here's what he did. He said that the correct way to drink this, you buy... He said, Nariyal
please don't repeat this. This is
He says, go buy a coconut. Yeah. You throw out half the water, pour the rum into that, and go all around town drinking it. No one will know.
Brilliant. This is amazing. This is a story I've not heard.
So, I mean, people can tell because after some time, you're like just basically staggering. After your third or fourth coconut, you're like, but it is awesome. And the thing to do is you take a coconut like this and go sit on the beach. And so I mean, it's decades since I've done this. So I don't know how the beaches are now and how how flavorful the coconut water is, but it's an awesome thing. Yeah.
It's an incredible hack. Yeah. This is fantastic. Like, I think if we do 3-4 more of these kind of episodes, Naren, you won't have to write your book because the audio book is already going to be ready. This was fantastic, Naren. Thank you for sharing all the stories. This felt like an extremely personal episode or a couple of episodes as it would end up being. So as you have spoken a lot today, so I don't think we should ask you to sign off as we normally do. By the way, the reason you haven't heard Srikeit's voice for the last 15-20 minutes or so is because he had to leave. So it's just been the three of us. We haven't choked him up or anything. So Naren has been talking for most of this time. So Tony, why don't you end today's episode? I'm putting everyone on the spot today.
We'll end on the spirit of Mumbai. Stay safe, stay spirited, and stay simplified.
Yes.
Alliteration and all I did off.
So
superb.
Thanks, guys, and see you next week. Stay tuned.
Bye.
And there you have it. That is our conversation with Naren, where we once in a while, when we run out of ideas, we interview our own. I hope you enjoyed this. This has genuinely been like, I mean, I'm recording this outro right after we finish the recording, and I have a huge smile on my face, even as Zoya, you can hear her in the background bellowing for food. So I must now go and feed her. A good way to end that episode, which we ended with on food. Well, that's our episode on the city of Bombay. I hope you liked it. And some stories about the place with Naren. Do hit Naren up on Twitter for food recommendations or anything about the city of Bombay. He is like deeply, deeply knowledgeable about the city, all lived experience. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So I hope you enjoyed these 2 special episodes of Simblified, and we will be back in your ears next week with something else. See you soon.
We face 100 dilemmas every day while raising our children and nurturing our families. Why not let science help us make informed decisions to solve our dilemmas? Hi, I'm Devi Shobha.
And I'm Meghna. We host Big Talk About Tiny Humans, where we will help you unpack challenges around parenting and your child's development.
And more importantly, we will equip you with research-backed strategies that you can readily act on.
Tune in to our podcast every Wednesday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or your favorite podcast platforms.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.